Robert Cohen. So, Mr. Cohen, we've been running a segment on global governance. Can you shed some light on global governance from your perspective?
Well, I think global governance is increasingly important, especially in this day and age where we're living in a partially globalized world and where there's a lot of interdependence. Interdependence without governance is disorderly. The way that we need to handle this interdependence is by creating and designing institutions that will work to our advantage and will help create cohesion on the international stage. In my opinion, global governance has to be limited and at a very basic level, almost shallow, in order to be something that will prevail and just something that will endure through time and be found successful. In order for us to reap the rewards of globalization, which is obviously happening around us, we need to work off of cooperation and really embrace institutions and construct them and conceptualize them as so that they will suit our needs the best and so that we can prosper. 5 key functions need to be handled by either regional or international institutions. The first is large-scale violence. The second, negative externalities of decentralized action. Third, to provide clear focal points. 4, to deal with system disruptions. And 5, to guarantee against the worst forms of abuse. So what we need to do is we need to design institutions that can be implemented on the local and the national that work with our diversity to help us have more cohesive actions in the international community.
Back from the United Nations headquarters in New York City, we're here in the 60 Minutes studio. Now we're going to look at some more critical perspectives on global governance.
We'll be discussing issues pertaining to global governance. We have 5 experts who will each be discussing a specific issue regarding global governance and its different paradigms. Furthest to my right, we have United Nations General Romeo Besant, Commander of the Royal Mounted Police, who will be discussing the Canadian Mounted Police, who will be discussing issues of security and the state. Next to my right, we have Ms. Kathleen McConaughey, who will be discussing issues regarding celebrity diplomacy. Immediately to my left, we have Ms. Dorothy Fitzpatrick, who will be discussing issues of sustainable development. To her left, we have Ms. Dundee, who will be discussing natural resources, the environment, and issues of water. And finally, last but not least, Ms. Laura Crawford, who will be discussing issues of human rights. First, I'd like to pose a question to all experts present today, and I'll start with you, General Romeo Besant. Why do you believe that your issue of security is of paramount importance to global governance?
Well, Mr. Wallace, I just want to thank you for having me on the show today. It's a privilege to be here. The issue that I want to address today in a global governance fashion is the issue of security. I believe that there is no more salient or dangerous issue threatening the world today and the people today than the use of nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. This is an issue that is so important because we have a world growing with hostility out there. Countries are beginning to define their borders more clearly. They're beginning to threaten one another more adversely. So I believe that this is definitely the most salient issue. It needs to be addressed, funds need to be put in place, and the world needs to keep their eyes on the security issues today. If a nuclear weapon were to be used, we would be unable to recover from this. There are certain issues out there that are important, but if a nuclear weapon was deployed, we would not be able to recover from this. Okay? We need to bring countries together. We need to have them, create a space and have them sign our nuclear proliferation treaty so that issues like this will not threaten us in the future. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Kathleen McConaughey, same question to you. Why do you think the issue of celebrity diplomacy and its impact on global governance is important?
It's actually very important because celebrities have become more and more important participants in the debate for the future of development in our globalized world today. However, celebrity diplomacy, instead of helping, actually degrades the global governance framework that we've been trying to create because of their very one-dimensional attitude towards the problems that are occurring in our world. They have this idea that throwing aid at a country and waiving their debt and providing education will automatically increase development. And while it's a very seductive and very cute idea, the issues are so much more complex and demand so much more knowledge and experience and attention being paid to each individual country and sub-region within them because of the different problems within each, that it's very dangerous to oversimplify these conditions, and it can actually make the conditions in those places much, much worse. The oversimplification of these issues is basically because of the media buzz, because that's basically how celebrities work. That's how they get their word out, is because of their importance in our pop culture, using slogans and images. However, these well-meaning interventions probably prolong the actual tragedy instead of ending it, and rather than raising the ability of Africans to take care of themselves, it basically makes the continent go into much deeper trouble, paralyzing their initiative, and almost creating somewhat of a beggar's mentality, possibly.
All right, thank you. Now we move to Ms. Fitzpatrick. Why do you think sustainable development is important to global governance?
Well, many people misunderstand sustainable development because they see it as contradicting terms. And now it is contradicting because our development is not sustainable. Our development is unsustainable. And this needs to be addressed. Humans can only develop as far as the ecosystem will take them. So sustainable development unifies three key concepts: social development, economic development, as well as environmental protection. China, for example, estimated 1.45 billion people in 2031 will consume roughly 2/3 of the global grain harvest, 305 million tons of paper, which is twice the current world production, and 99 million barrels of oil a day, eclipsing the current world oil production by 84 million barrels. The ecosystem will not be able to support a world if one country can max out all its resources. So it is evident that our world will not be able to sustain itself. Humans will not be able to sustain anything, let alone economic development. So continue development the way we're doing within our capitalist system, humans will face a security threat that has never been seen before.
All right, but now moving on over to Ms. Dundee. Why do you think the issue of water is important to global governance?
Well, I completely agree with my colleague, Dorothy, because as she said, natural resources are essential not only to our survival, but in launching, building, and sustaining our societies. Yet today, our societies are growing completely unsustainably and depleting our resources at alarming rates. Now because of this, it is essential to address these problems. And there's a lot of focus on oil extraction and the energy crisis. However, we overlook one of the most major pressing issues, the diminishing of fresh water resources. Today, over 80 countries, constituting 40% of our world's population, is suffering from the lack of safe, fresh water. This disappearance of this essential resource affects countries politically, economically, and socially. More devastating is that it just does not target one or a few specific states, it targets entire regions, further encouraging more conflict and problems within those regions. Thus, because it's a major global issue, it deserves immediate global attention on a global governance scale.
Thank you.